Uncle Trump has one shot, one opportunity to stop the death of America. One moment with the freedom of interest, but with DC with young. Vivek's palms are sweaty, six big job gets heavy. There's curry on his sweater already, mom's tandoori. He's nervous, but DOD is getting order ready to drop bombs, cause he gon' got the fat with Eddie. He goes down, DC crowd cries so loud. He opens his mouth, the words you find just come out. They choking now, we the people joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, back. Snap back, DOD, Elon, face with gravity. Oh, grab your up with the choke, he's so ready. No boast, make it look easy. No, he works at it, he knows it push him in. Gotta keep him alive. Stand together, start World War III, make America great again.
We want to welcome Sam Faddis back to our show because he has a plethora of knowledge. He is one of the senior editors of And Magazine, and he has been on Steve Bannon's War Rooms many, many times, as well as other programs. Welcome back, Sam. We really appreciate it. And let's get this baby going.
Well, I think there's some war going on in the Middle East, and because I believe you were as a CIA officer in the Middle East, you have knowledge. So what's going on?
Right. Well, the immediate issue is this, I guess we'll just call it a war between Israel and Iran, right? And I mean, more generally, the Iranians have this nasty habit of saying that they want to wipe the Israelis off the face of the earth, and not just talking about it, but doing a great deal to support it. But the immediate proximate cause is the status of the Iranian nuclear program. In a nutshell, for folks who don't want to get lost in nuclear physics. The Iranians have been working on a nuclear weapon for at least 20 years, 25 years, whatever it is now. There is no peaceful Iranian nuclear program. That's a bunch of garbage. They want to have a nuclear weapon. They have been working on it in a whole variety of ways, as I said, for a quarter of a century at least. And there are kind of two big pieces to what that program consists of. I mean, they've decided to build a weapon using uranium. There's a whole enrichment process you have to go through. If you dig uranium out, physicists are going to scream at my description of how this works, but for the layperson, you dig uranium out of the ground, most of that uranium is useless. In other words, you can't make it go boom. Okay, there's a tiny trace isotope in the uranium, isotope meaning a slightly different version of the element. Considerably less than 1% of that material is what you need that will actually go boom. And what you have to do is go through this incredibly laborious process of concentrating that, getting rid of the stuff that's useless, and building a greater and greater and greater concentration of the stuff that is valuable to you. That's what's known as enriching the uranium. When you end up with highly enriched uranium, it's more than 80% of the material is now that one isotope. That the exact figure is classified and nobody cares. But anyway, it takes a really, really, really long time to do this, and a massive effort. And when people talk about the Iranian nuclear program, that's usually what they're talking about, is this whole business with centrifuges spinning and stuff that we don't need to get lost in. But that's very visible, and it's hard to hide that because you're talking about big facilities with a lot of equipment. Separately, you have to actually build the device into which you're going to put that uranium. Think of this like a bomb, and you got to build the device that you're going to put the C4 in or whatever. So we know that the Iranians have actually been doing both of those things for a very long time. In other words, so anybody that thinks that they're going to enrich the uranium and then they're going to figure out how to build the bomb is missing the point. You do both of these things at the same time. And then when you're all done and you have the sufficient quantity of enriched uranium, and you have to put it into a metallic form anyway, a bunch of other practical stuff, you then essentially put it into the device and you're ready to rock and roll. The Israelis obviously got to the point, based on their intelligence, where they calculated that the Iranians were way, way too close to being able to do this. In other words, not just having sufficient highly enriched uranium to make a bomb, but also having the device, or probably, I think the figure now they're saying 8 or 9 devices. And once you have the uranium and you have the devices, it doesn't take a long time to put those two things together. To give you an idea, when the Chinese went nuclear in 1964, from the time they finally had the highly enriched uranium in its final form, it took them 72 hours to finish assembly of the device. So a grand total of 3 days from having enough uranium in its final form to being able to blow one up, which they did. So that's the assessment the Israelis have clearly made, is we're now down to the point where we're standing on the precipice of not being able to stop them. We're so close to the finish line. Also keep in mind, again, without getting lost in details, the part, as I said, where you enrich the uranium that goes on for years is big, and it requires big facilities and a lot of machines. Relatively speaking, it's visible. Relatively easy to find. Not that the Iranians are advertising it, but relatively easy to find a giant facility with all these things. Once you have the uranium in its final form and you're down to a matter of kilograms of material, everything that happens after that in terms of assembling the device can be done a lot of places, much smaller facilities. So now we're into the realm of a lot harder to figure out where it is. So when you start talking about blowing things up, you're like, well, what are we blowing up, man?
Right.
So the Israelis essentially reached a point where they said, we're about to cross we're pretty much at the point of no return.
Right.
And if we don't act now, we're dealing with an Iran that has nuclear weapons, and that's a whole different deal.
Here's my question. Where was America on this? Because Trump doesn't want war. And I'm surprised that it kind of went down like this, because there should have been some sitting down at a table, some kind of negotiation, some kind of terms met.
They've been negotiating with Iran. Trump came in and said to Iran, we want to make a deal with you if you agree to not develop uranium for military purposes, which of course I don't trust anything they say. But anyway, he did make that effort. He said you have 60 days. This attack on Iran happened on the 61st day. Look, what I'm worried about is, first of all, under Obama and Biden, tens of billions of dollars, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars were sent to Iran and through various means. The sanctions were relaxed under Biden. And I'm just worried that Iran didn't use a few billions to buy a few bombs from China or Pakistan or some country, and God knows where they are. To me, Israel's been more than patient with this. I hope that they can, you can be anti-war, against war, and one way to avoid a war is to prevent your enemy from attacking you. If your enemy says, I want to kill you, and I've been spending the last 20 years to kill you, you need to believe them, right?
Well, so, to address both points, I guess, is, my sense is that Trump came in and said, the way I want to resolve this is I want to negotiate a solution to this. And that he reached a point where he didn't believe they were serious about negotiating. And also probably was convinced by intelligence coming in, I would assume Israeli intelligence, saying if we don't do this now, we're dealing with a nuclear Iran. And everybody accepted that we can't do that. So, I think the last thing any of us want is another war, especially one that we're going to get sucked into. But I mean, I don't trust the Iranians as far as I can throw them. I don't mean the Iranian people, but the guys in charge. I don't think, I was always pessimistic about the negotiations because I don't think you're dealing with rational people who want to negotiate coexistence. You're dealing with guys who, I mean, the mullahs have an apocalyptic vision of the world in their sense, Islamic. They want the apocalypse and Armageddon because they are convinced that they will win. And that's just like the dudes who blow themselves up are looking, it's not a sacrifice. They're looking forward to it because that's the ticket to paradise. When they press that button, they're not like, goodbye, cruel world. It's like, this is my ticket to paradise. These guys, for them, the only way to get to the promised future is through this Armageddon-like event, their own version. So when you're dealing with dudes like that and you're trying to negotiate a rational existence, it's sort of like, okay, well, we're not really looking for the same thing, are we? I cannot imagine that the Israelis staged this attack without our knowledge. I actually can't imagine that the Israelis staged this attack without our assistance on some level, no matter what we say publicly. At a minimum, intelligence, things like satellite imagery and stuff like that, at a minimum. It's just, that's, in my experience, that's not real. They didn't somehow set this all up and do this and without our knowledge, and they didn't do it without us on some level saying, go ahead. Now, what the administration is going to say, exactly how they're going to phrase that publicly, that's a whole other matter of politics. But, the real kicker here is, to me, is this issue of you're attacking things, you're blowing things up, you're striking targets. Everybody talks in terms of ability to strike the target in terms of like they buried something in the ground. Is our bomb big enough and capable enough to blow this thing up? Okay, those are key factors, but the first factor is what is it you're blowing up? And how do you know what you need to blow up? We're talking about a secret program that the Iranians have been hiding from people for 25 years, and they're not stupid. And they know what the capabilities of the Israelis are. So are we sure when we're done that we destroyed everything that needed to be destroyed? Are we even sure right now that they don't already have a nuclear weapon? Because this is not, intelligence is not really black and white, like you just got to report 100%. This is what you have are indications. Now, the Israelis have put a lot of effort into this. They got a lot of guys on the ground. They know what they're doing. They're not slouches. Nobody's perfect. So when it's done, we will see where we are. One of the things that I took away from the Israeli strikes was the number of Iranian nuclear scientists they were killing. They were literally blowing up apartments, specific apartments. So you can see video coming out of Tehran. The whole building wasn't taken down. A missile blew up an apartment. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it didn't damage the apartment next door. I'm just saying they deliberately didn't come in and blow the whole building up. They were killing the guy who lived in that apartment. And in most cases, they were either senior military officials or they were Iranian nuclear scientists. My take on that is you're killing the guys who can put the bomb together. So that's one way to interpret that is if you're not sure where all the pieces of the bomb are, but you can find the guys who know how to build it, you kill all the guys who can build it. So you can look at that two ways. One of them is them just being safe. The other is they themselves are not sure that they know where all the pieces are.
Look, let me ask you this, Sam. You have Saudi Arabia, Qatar. I heard this morning, I have to confirm it, that Qatar actually is helping Israel in some way, which was shocking for me to hear. You have these other Sunni Muslim nations that actually, would probably like to just maybe trade with Israel and not have all this constant drama. And Iran has been backing terrorist forces attacking Saudi Arabia and these other countries anyway. Do you see that but they don't want to affiliate with American Israel if we're weak and indecisive and incompetent.
Right.
So
That's sure.
do you see that possibility that these other nations, seeing that Israel is not taking any crap anymore and taking action to remove not the whole country, they're not invading Iran, they're not trying to overthrow the country, but they're taking out the nuclear, as much as they can, their nuclear weapons program. Do you see the possibility that this will lead to peaceful relationships between Israel and Saudi Arabia and these other countries? I'm just curious what you think.
Well, I mean, first we got to see how
Right.
this whole immediate conflict with Iran plays out, because that may set the whole region on fire in a bunch of ways. Look, it's the Middle East. People say things all the time in public and a completely different thing in private, right? They talk out of both sides of their mouth. The fact that the Qataris deal with us and have a giant air base there for us, but also simultaneously are half in bed with the Iranians and then may deal with the Israelis, that's just business as usual in the Middle East. The idea that these people come cleanly down on one side of the other. Every Arab nation in the world talks about the poor Palestinians. They all despise the Palestinians. I'm not saying that they should despise the Palestinians. I'm just saying they regard them as, well, the things they say about them, frankly, are horrible racist things. It's like when Trump was trying to get the Egyptians to agree to let the Palestinians come live in Egypt. Well, they'll all day long tell you about the poor Palestinians and the Israelis are being mean to them. You go talk to the government in Cairo and ask them to bring 1 million Palestinians in, they're going to look at you like you got 3 heads. They're like, are you kidding me? Have you seen the fence we built between Egypt and Gaza? We don't want any of those people here. As you noted, in the Middle East, there's a big divide between Shia and Sunni Muslims. Right. We've been fighting over that for 1,500 years. Right. Okay, but also there's a divide between Persians and Arabs. Iranians being Persians and all these Sunni nations basically being Arabs. They despise each other. The Persians consider themselves to be heirs to this ancient civilization, right? I mean, there's a reason why when you talk the Greeks about Thermopylae and Marathon and stuff and how these great victories, well, the reason what made them great, because the Persians were this massive, incredibly powerful empire, and it was the fact that they defeated those guys that made the victory such a big deal, and that's thousands of years ago you're talking about. So the Persians consider themselves heirs to this immense tradition, one of the great civilizations of the world, yada, yada. And the Arabs, about the Arabs, they say horrible, disparaging things that I won't repeat, about how you're just basically garbage human beings that have been living in the desert with your camels all this time. While we were building great cities, what were you guys doing? Nothing. And then one day you woke up and there was oil under your feet, and now you're rich and you think you're big shots. This is the kind of, I'm not saying those things to endorse any of these sides. I'm just saying this idea that the whole Middle East is somehow united is 180 degrees out, right? There is. And the Saudis will say things about the Israelis in public because they feel like they have to adopt a certain position. And then when you sit down with them in private, they'd be like, man, we just want this whole thing to go away and have normal relations and make money and move on with life. We want to get past this Arab-Israeli conflict. But the immediate issue with, that I guess the centerpiece there is everybody kind of has a public face and then what they really think. But the immediate issue is whether this conflict with Iran is resolved or not. I don't, one way this goes is one way or the other, Iran goes back into the box and things get kinder and gentler and The other way is it spirals out of control and the whole place goes up in flames, particularly if the Iranians in the middle of this detonate a nuclear weapon out in the desert and announce that they actually have nukes.
Right.
Then all bets are off.
Well, maybe they're expecting a plane load full of cash to come for
Well,
them to
they-
stop.
they
'cause they're so
could.
accustomed to us and our administrations in the past from cutting deals.
Well, and they could also, as you said in your original question, is they have very close relations with the Chinese. The Chinese could land a plane in Tehran airport and deliver nukes. They could buy nukes from the Pakistanis. You could acquire a full. I mean, the other element of this is because we're talking about this Arab, Persian, if you will, animosity. If the Iranians go nuclear, it's not just the Israelis who are going to be freaking out.
Right.
Like we've always said, you know what's going to happen the day after the Iranians go nuclear? The Saudis are going to send a plane load of cash to Islamabad,
Right.
and the plane's going to fly back with a turnkey nuclear arsenal from the Pakistanis. The Saudis won't develop it. They'll just go buy a whole, and they'll probably actually hire the Pakistanis to run the missiles, but they will go, because Riyadh's not going to sit there and look at the Iranians and not have nuclear weapons, too. That's what I mean by the whole thing just kind of, then the next thing you know, it's just spiraling out of control.
Let me ask you this. I mean, where we are, I think, is the result of decades of enablement under
Yes.
Obama and
Yes.
Biden, sending billions of dollars
Yes,
to Iran.
yes.
And my question to you is, why? Why did they do that? I'm just curious what your.
Well, I think the estimates I've seen, just the fact that Biden wouldn't enforce the sanctions preventing these. Theoretically, the Iranians are not supposed to be selling oil on the international market. We deliberately decided under Biden not to enforce those sanctions. That alone gave the Iranians $100 billion. Before we talk about plane loads of cash and anything else, we gave them $100 billion. Why? Unfortunately, because I think there were people in the Biden administration, the Obama administration, who think we're the bad guys.
Right.
They're actually sympathetic to the Iranians, and they think when Palestinian terrorists murder children that somehow that's a freedom fighter, and so I don't think I don't think it's incompetence. I think it's very, very deliberate action.
Right. All right, my last question is, my understanding is that Israel smuggled in a large group of drones into Iran and these were launched from inside Iran to attack, I guess, various military sites in Iran. And my question is, if they could do that, then who's to say that China, which has been buying land in Nebraska and all over the United States,
Right.
and buying various factories of various sorts,
Right.
who's to say that China or even some other country that I don't even know about doesn't have a drones ready to launch in the event of some conflict with the United? I'm just kind of I'm asking you.
Why couldn't it happen here? It could happen here.
Yeah.
Currently, the border appears to me to be under control.
Right.
And immigration, illegal immigration, I think is down by 99 point something %. Okay, but for years, there was no border. Everybody and his brother could come in. In fact, we brought people in. We stopped, and we have no idea how many gotaways there were. And okay, anything could be on U.S. soil. So you could have drones, you could have bombs, you could have biological, chemical agents.
They arrested 3 Chinese scientists with the.
3 Chinese scientists who have been arrested smuggling organisms into one lab in the University of Michigan, and nobody can tell you that they're the only ones that brought stuff to that lab. And then nobody has any idea how much stuff was brought to all the other labs all over the United States. So, I mean, I hate to sound horribly depressing, although these subjects always end up being really depressing, but it's like I have said before, you know, look, if I was on the Iranian side as an example and I was sitting in Venezuela, which is effectively a base for them, and I'm working for them, and you told me, here's a nuclear weapon and I need you to take it into the United States and I need you to detonate it in a city, my only question would be, where do you want it and when do you want it? And that's not because like I'm some super rock star. It's just because if you know what you're doing, and they have plenty of boys who know what they're doing, and our defenses are completely down, and they have the capabilities they have, there's no realistic way you would have stopped that. Now, hopefully we are fixing all of that, but that has been true for a long time.
Right. Yeah, and this will take years for, I mean, thank God Trump is, I mean, it looks like they are serious to deal with this issue, right? Thank God.
Yeah, but the issue is, look, the doors have been open on the House for a really long time.
Right.
Now you close the doors.
Right.
Okay, so let's assume nobody else is coming in. It's a big house. How many people are already here? I mean, have we, you know, and how many operatives and teams, right? The Iranians have been trying to kill Trump and senior members of his first administration for several years now. They've been very public. And then we know as fact, just from what's been unclassified, you know, they were in the press, that they have had teams and operatives here. Okay. Have we caught those teams and operatives? Like, we know they're here, and we know they announced they were going to do this.
Right.
And we took it seriously enough that we put Secret Service protection on former members of the administration, right? Like John Bolton, who used to be National Security Advisor, has a protective detail. No, we haven't caught those guys. So you know as fact that you got Iranian hit teams on U.S. soil that have been hunting very senior former officials. But those guys are not in custody. You haven't caught them. You haven't wrapped them up.
Right.
Well, that's not an encouraging sign right there, right?
Okay, now that we've depressed our audience.
I feel like we hit rock bottom. I feel like that's a really, really depressing note.
Well, we need to know what we're in store for. And the reality is, thank you, Sam, so much for really getting into the nitty-gritty of the subject. And at least, you know, we need to be an informed populace, and that's the important thing.
Right.
And we look forward to hearing your report in the future on this, because it's not going away.
I'll try to think of something upbeat to say for the next. Some good news.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Uncle Trump has one shot, one opportunity to stop the death of America. One moment with the freedom of interest. But what DC with, yo? Vivek's palms are sweaty, his next big job gets heavy. There's curry on his sweater already, mom's tandoori. He's nervous, but DOD is getting order ready to drop bombs, cause he gon' got the fat with Eddie. He goes down, DC crowd cries so loud. He opens his mouth, the words you find just come out. They choking now, we the people joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over bound. Snap back, DOGE, lock, they swing gravity. Oh, grab your rock with the choke. It's so glad he don't boast, make it look easy. No, he works at it, he knows he'll push him in. Gotta keep him alive. Stand together. Start World War III. Make America great again.